Today we're going to be looking at something pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Cameron Diaz, some of her recent comments have really sparked a lot of buzz online.
I've seen that.
Yeah. So we're going to be diving into all that today, see what we can uncover.
Sounds good.
So the main source that we have is an entertainment news article that came out on January 30th, just the other day of this year, of course. And the big question that it seems like everyone is asking is Cameron Diaz already thinking about taking another break from Hollywood?
That's interesting because she just got back
Exactly.
from a break.
Yeah, so that's what makes this so interesting to me.
I see what you mean.
So the article, it kind of starts by diving into this conversation that Diaz had with Demi Moore.
Okay.
And I think that that's really important context here.
Yeah, for sure.
They were doing a Zoom call for Vanity Fair and talking about their new movie.
Right, The Substance.
Yes, The Substance.
Which is really interesting in and of itself. It is.
Just the themes that it brings up about women in Hollywood.
Yeah,
Ageism, objectification.
for sure.
So I think that really sets the stage for what Diaz is saying.
Okay, so let's get into some of the specifics here.
Yeah, let's do it.
What exactly did she say that has everyone speculating?
Well, a lot of what she talked about was how women in Hollywood, and really everywhere, are conditioned to be objectified.
Right.
That there's this expectation to fit a certain mold, a certain look.
Yeah, and I think she even had this really striking analogy about dolls.
She did. She said, and I quote, "We've had dolls made out of us."
Wow.
It's just so innate. It's so ingrained in us.
I mean, that really puts it into perspective.
It does.
I mean, it makes you wonder if someone like Cameron Diaz, who has achieved so much success in Hollywood,
Right.
if she still feels this kind of pressure, what does that mean for other women in the industry?
It's a really important question and one we should probably explore a little more.
Yeah, definitely. But
sorry.
no, you go ahead. I was just going to say that there's a lot of research out there about the psychological impacts of always being judged by your appearance.
Right. But I mean, we can dive into that in a bit. But
Oh, sure.
before we get too deep into the research, I did want to bring up another point from this article.
Okay.
They actually quoted a showbiz commentator who told Radar Online that Diaz just doesn't seem happy with the way Hollywood operates. And so I think that that observation just really fuels the speculation about her maybe wanting another break.
Potentially even a permanent one this time.
Yeah, especially since she officially retired back in 2018.
Yeah.
Before agreeing to do this new Netflix thriller Back in Action with Jamie Foxx.
Oh, right.
It just came out this month.
Yeah.
So it really makes you wonder if, coming back to do this film maybe stirred up some old frustrations for her.
Oh, definitely. It's a possibility.
Yeah.
But it's important to point out we're speculating here.
Right.
Diaz hasn't released any kind of official statement about her future plans.
So I guess what we're dealing with here is kind of like a puzzle.
Yeah, kinda.
We've got these pointed comments from Diaz. We've got a lot of speculation from industry insiders.
Right.
But no clear confirmation about what she's actually planning to do next.
Yeah, and I think that uncertainty adds another layer to this whole conversation.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because even if Diaz doesn't end up stepping away from acting completely, her comments still force us to examine these larger issues that are at play here.
For sure.
So we have to ask ourselves, are things really changing in Hollywood? And if so, how quickly?
Right, and at what cost? I think if we step back for a sec and kind of look at the bigger picture here,
Yeah.
it feels like Diaz is tapping into something that's been a problem in Hollywood for a long time.
Absolutely. These issues of ageism and sexism,
Right.
especially this focus on women's appearance in Hollywood, they're not new.
Yeah, no, they're not.
But I think what's interesting here is that you have someone like Cameron Diaz, who has reached the pinnacle of success in this industry.
Yep.
And she's still feeling the weight of these expectations.
For sure.
It really makes you think how deeply ingrained these biases must be.
Right, it's not like she's some unknown actress struggling to get her foot in the door.
Exactly.
Diaz is a household name.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think her comments really highlight this important point. Even achieving major success,
Yeah.
it doesn't make you immune to these pressures.
Wow.
Imagine being in that position, having to constantly navigate these expectations,
Yeah.
and potentially even feeling like you have to choose between your career and speaking out against these issues.
It's a lot to unpack.
It really is.
And, as we're talking about this, I keep thinking about how often we see these same issues reflected in the types of roles women are offered in Hollywood,
Well, absolutely.
especially as they get older.
Yeah, that's a great observation. And it brings up a point that I wanted to touch on, the limited range of roles that are even available to women.
Right.
I mean, how many times have we seen talented actresses relegated to playing the wife,
Oh, yeah,
the mother, or the love interest?
for sure.
These characters who are defined solely by their relationship to a male character.
You're so right. It often feels like those roles are even more limited once an actress reaches a certain age.
Exactly. There's this unspoken rule in Hollywood that a woman's value decreases as she ages,
Right.
which is simply not true.
Of course not.
And it's not just about the roles themselves.
Yeah.
It's about the power dynamics that are at play.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Like who's making the decisions about which stories are told and who gets to tell them.
That's a really crucial question. I mean, do you think that part of the solution here lies in having more women in positions of power behind the scenes?
I think so. Absolutely.
Okay.
Having more women in those decision-making roles like producers, directors,
Right.
would undoubtedly lead to more diverse stories being told.
For sure.
Stories that showcase the full range of women's experiences and perspectives.
Right. And just think about the impact that that would have, not just on the industry itself,
Yeah.
but on how audiences perceive women and their roles in society. It would be huge.
Okay, so we've talked about the problem.
Yeah.
We've talked about some of the factors that contribute to it.
Right.
But what about solutions?
Okay.
What would it actually take for Hollywood to become a more equitable and empowering place for women?
Well, I think it starts with recognizing that this is a systemic issue,
No.
not just a few isolated incidents.
Right.
It's ingrained in the very fabric of the industry.
Yeah.
And that means we need to look at everything from casting practices to the way that female characters are written and portrayed.
So it's not just about getting more women in front of the camera.
No.
It's about changing the whole narrative.
Exactly. And it's about giving women the space and the support to tell their own stories,
Right.
both in front of and behind the camera.
Okay.
I mean, think about how many talented female writers, directors, and producers are out there
Yeah.
just waiting for their chance to break through.
Yeah, and for everyone that does, they can open the door for so many more to follow. That's exactly right. And
Yeah.
that's why this conversation is so important.
Yeah.
Because even if Cameron Diaz ultimately decides to stay in Hollywood,
Right.
her willingness to speak out, to challenge the status quo, it can have this ripple effect.
Absolutely. And as we're talking about this, I'm remembering all these amazing films
Yes.
that have centered on these strong, complex female characters.
Oh, for sure.
Films that have challenged stereotypes and sparked important conversations.
That's a great point, and it shows that change is possible.
Yeah.
It's about building on those successes, amplifying those voices, and continuing to push for progress.
So where does all of this leave Cameron Diaz and her future in Hollywood?
Well, that is the big question, isn't it?
It is.
And as we mentioned earlier, there's no official word yet on what her next move will be.
Right.
But honestly, I think her decision is almost beside the point.
Really? Why is that?
Because she's already made a huge impact by just starting this conversation.
Yeah.
She's used her platform to shine a light on these important issues and to challenge us all to think critically about the way Hollywood operates and the messages that it sends.
That's a really insightful way to look at it. So whether she chooses to stay in Hollywood or step away, her words have already started a ripple effect.
Absolutely. And now it's up to the rest of us to continue the conversation and to push for real, meaningful change.
I completely agree. And as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I think it's important for all of us listening to ask ourselves, what role can we play in creating a more equitable and empowering environment for women?
Right.
Not just in Hollywood, but in all aspects of our lives. As we wrap up this deep dive into Cameron Diaz and her thoughts on Hollywood, it feels like we've uncovered more layers than we initially anticipated.
Yeah, I think that's often the case when we delve into complex issues like this. You know?
Right.
The more we explore, the more we realize how interconnected everything really is.
Yeah.
And in this case, Diaz's comments have really opened up this broader discussion about the challenges women face in the entertainment industry and beyond.
It's definitely made me think differently about the movies I watch and the stories that are being told. I'm more aware now of these subtle ways that these biases can kind of seep into the narrative.
Yeah, I think that increased awareness is a crucial first step towards change.
Okay.
When we start to notice these things, when we start to question the status quo, we become more empowered to actually challenge it.
So if we're thinking about concrete actions, where do we even begin to tackle a problem as deeply rooted as sexism and ageism in Hollywood?
Well, I think it's about recognizing that there's no single solution, no magic bullet. It requires a multifaceted approach, and it starts with each of us taking responsibility for the part we play in perpetuating these biases.
So what can we as viewers, as consumers of entertainment, actually do to make a difference?
That's a great question, and I think it starts with being more conscious consumers.
Yeah.
When you're choosing a movie to watch, ask yourself, who are the main characters? Are they complex, well-developed female characters, or are they just there to support the male storyline? Who's behind the camera? Is it a diverse team of writers, directors, producers?
Yeah, those are questions I'm definitely going to be asking myself from now on.
What?
And if we don't like the answers that we're finding, what can we do?
Well, we have the power to support the films and television shows that are promoting positive representation.
Okay.
Seek out stories told by women, stories that challenge stereotypes, stories that showcase the full spectrum of human experiences. And don't be afraid to use your voice. Talk about these issues with your friends. Share articles and documentaries on social media support organizations that are fighting for gender equality in the entertainment industry.
So it sounds like what you're saying is change starts with awareness, but it also requires action.
Exactly. Awareness without action is passive. But when we combine awareness with conscious choices and active support for change, that's when we start to see real progress.
This deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about, and I hope it's done the same for everyone listening.
Me too, because ultimately this isn't just about Hollywood.
Right.
It's about creating a world where everyone feels seen, valued, and empowered to tell their own stories.
Yeah.
And that's a future worth fighting for.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.